Hello, my name is Vanessa Maydew. I am Communications and Knowledge Exchange Specialist for SEBI Livestock, the Center for Supporting Evidence-Based Interventions in Livestock. Welcome to our final Livestock Data summer session. This month, the Livestock Data for Decisions Community of Practice hosted a series of learning events to showcase the work of our members. The summer sessions have offered unique insights into tools, techniques, and opportunities, and a chance to connect with each other. These one-hour sessions are aimed at researchers, project implementers, industry, and funders who work in livestock development. So welcome to today's session. The theme is Tags from Text, an automated tool to standardize livestock terminology. We have a guest speaker who I'll introduce now. So we have Alexander Robertson from the University of Edinburgh. He is a PhD candidate and a member of the Centre for Doctoral Training in Data Science, a program that trains a new generation of data scientists and AI practitioners and researchers. In his work, Alex investigates how language is used, especially in social media, how it varies between people, and how this all changes across time. He is interested in anything to do with historical spelling variation, the psychology of language processing, language use, and variation. So welcome, Alex. We also have Dr. Louise Donison, the Senior Data Scientist at SEBI Livestock. She's committed to delivering data solutions focused on stakeholder needs, and she has a background working in the IT industry, delivering complex projects in multiple sectors such as finance, telecoms, and government. So we're glad to have her as well. So I'll give a quick overview of today's format. So Louise will provide a 5-minute introduction, and then Alex will give us a 15-20 minute demo of the tool. And anytime during the session, you may type questions or comments in the chat. After the presentation, we will have time for quick clarification questions, and then we're going to see how many people we get. We may go into breakout groups or in plenary. We'll make a decision in a moment to dive into the tool and some of its uses and potential developments and so forth. So with that, I will hand over to Louise. I'll stop sharing my screen and let her begin. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. I'm just loading up the slides. Have they come up now?
Yes.
Great. So as Vanessa said, we've been working with the Bayes on this particular project, the tagging tool. I'll just give a bit of a background of why we actually needed it. So we're very happy to work with the Bayes. They provide a lot of expertise for us, as Bayes is the University of Edinburgh's innovation hub for data science and artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of expertise in natural language processing, which Alex brings to this project. So that was why we were so keen to partner with them. And really why we developed this tool, it's really to support SEBI in its data activities. Like other people in this community, we have had challenges around knowing what common terminology to use, what standards we should use in naming some of our terms and harmonizing our data. In particular, this tool, the first use case we've really designed for it is to help us provide tags to describe content on our website, livestockdata.org. Livestockdata.org is a repository for resources around livestock and data. And what we want to make sure is that the information there is easily discoverable. So when people come to search for it, they find what they need. And one of the challenges we found is to actually even know when we're sort of describing that content, how to describe it, what standard terms we should be using. So the tool that Alex is going to show you shortly is really trying to help us come up with some of those candidate tags that we can use. Out of this work also, we see that we were able to use some of that sort of terminology or language that we might want to use on some of the work we've also been doing with the Bayes around automating literature reviews, systematic map automation. And that's really understanding terms and used in papers. So what we see is often there's multiple terms for the same thing, and actually just understanding a bit better that language. So it means that when we are actually we're trying to extract out data from this literature, being able to sort of mine it for terms and have that common language. And then a third area that we're very keen to use this in, it's probably a little bit later down the line, is we're working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who we're funded by, to help harmonise some of their livestock data. And just knowing what sort of terms we should use to harmonise that data will be very useful. So there's quite a few ranges of use for us with this work. And overall, what it's really driving at is ensuring that the work that we do, the data that we process is findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable, really signing up to those FAIR principles. So why we're keen to present the work today is really to do some knowledge exchange. We know through conversations with other groups that other members of LD4D are facing similar challenges. So what we're really keen to do is convene people today and in the future to sort of think about how we can move forward in this area and explore areas of collaboration with the overarching aim of improving the availability, quality and reusability of livestock data. So we're going to sort of do a demo, but the sort of next steps really will be around exploring opportunities of use cases, refinements, and also sort of ontologies that we could add into this work. Quite keen to think about scope. These are some of the areas that we're interested in, and also probably think about next steps, what are the concrete activities we can do, and a common goal. So that's the end of my slides, and I will hand back over to Alex.
Thanks, Louise.
So yeah, I was on mute there. So thanks for that. So I think Louise has given the sort of the big picture of like what's going on and where this tool has come from. So I'll go into a bit more detail about the tool in sort of two ways. One is how the tool is constructed. It's actually a pipeline made of smaller blocks. So I'll go into some details about those. I won't go into enormous technical detail about the tag extraction process, but I do have references if people are interested in that side of things. Then I'll go on to show how we have used this pipeline on data that we already have. So this is the Livestock Data website that Louise mentioned. So and I have a demo that people will be able to access and play around with. So just to get started. So here is the pipeline. It's two main steps. So in the first step, in the blue at the top, the input to the system is just a simple text document, plain text. And then the key phrase extraction happens, which I'll go into some detail in a moment. But the output of this step is a list of key phrases, and also they're scored as well. So in terms of the importance of those key phrases as a way of summarizing the document. So these are the most relevant terms for this document. Then the example that I've got here is maybe quite poor because these are all single individual key phrases, but the key phrases can be multiple words. So it's not just limited to individual words. Once you've got these, for each of these individual phrases or words that have been extracted, then we put this through an ontology. So the example that we have here is going to be agrovoc. And then the output of this is for each of those key phrases, we have additional ontology data. So at the moment, we've got a description if one is available, or the broader terms, the narrower terms, or any related terms. So if you're thinking about the use case with the website, people will documents will have individual terms in them, but they might be better linked to other data through the ontology terms that are available. So it gives people the chance to sort of to zoom in or to zoom out based on like how broad or narrow they want their search to be. So that's the pipeline there. To give us a bit more information about the actual model that does the keyword extraction. So this is based on a paper from just a few years ago, unsupervised key phrase extraction with multi-partite graphs. So a thrilling title. What this does is it takes a text and splits it up into all sorts of little chunks, little key phrases, which all become candidates. And then a graph, which you can see here on the right-hand side here, is built showing how these key phrases connect. So this takes into account factors such as how often a particular phrase appears, what other phrases it co-occurs with, how far apart these phrases are in the text. And what you end up with is this kind of, it says here topic, but the topic here actually means the key phrases here. And it finds these sort of patterns in the data. Once you've got a graph like this, then you can, so builds a graph, connects them. Once you've got this graph, then you can filter this graph to find the key nodes in this using the text rank scoring system, which will say which ones of these items are the most relevant. So it does very well at filtering out noise, and also I think the very high quality phrases are extracted from this. And of course, they're also ranked as well, which I think is very important, because then you can say, you can look at the strongest versus the weakest candidates for key phrase extraction. Once you've actually processed lots of text documents and got lots of key phrases and ontology data linked up with those from whatever ontology that you're using, then this is this is where the pipeline ends, and then this is where it's really up to you to actually decide what you're going to do with this. So documents become key phrases, the key phrases become the ontology. Each document eventually becomes is it being a little bit slow there? Yes, yeah. Each eventually becomes a list of key phrases with the scores, and there's additional ontology data. But then deciding what do you want to do with that next is what is probably where the interesting part comes in. Thinking like, how will people use this data? So a couple of things to note about this this approach in terms of the good and the bad things. Probably the main benefit is that it's completely unsupervised, so you don't need to have any special data as the input. You don't need any labeled data or any examples of key phrases. It's just the raw text that you just put into the pipeline, and it doesn't need anything else. Yeah, sorry, my clicking's a bit laggy, sorry. It works in any language, so not just English. So in NLP, this is a major problem. A lot of models are, they focus on English, but there's no reason why this unsupervised extraction model can be in any language. And then also the key phrase model here that I've used, this based on this paper, actually this is quite modular. You can just swap that in for any other sort of model that you think is perhaps more appropriate for your task, depending on how you decide, to select a model. As far as the pipeline is concerned, you can just swap those in and out. And then again, similarly for the ontology, any ontology that you like, also multiple ontologies. This is all very modular. It's just a case of having a way to access those ontologies. So as I said, we've used AgriVault here. And also it's very fast. So this doesn't take very long at all. So it's the sort of thing that you can do in batch, and it will take like a couple of minutes perhaps at most. The slow part is actually the ontology query, because normally this is done through web APIs. So you have to send off queries for every word. This is the slow part more than anything. In terms of sort of the non-benefits, the key phrases that are extracted, they can only be text that occurs in the document. So it doesn't really do any kind of like rewording or rephrasing of anything. But I don't think that's a major issue. I think we would expect the language of a text to be probably the best language for summarizing it. Also only works on documents in isolation. So, you know, it might be, and I have some ideas on this we might discuss later on, but thinking about how we can take into account, you know, we've got the tags from one document and they've got their individual scores, but can we take into account other documents, especially if you've got lots of related documents? You know, there might be phrases that you want to naturally just filter out because they're so common across all the documents. Another thing is it's quite tricky, you know, once you have the key phrases, is actually like automatically evaluating them is because we don't have any training data, this is unsupervised. So actually looking at the output of these systems still probably requires, you know, an actual person to sit down and scrutinize them. And then, as I sort of hinted at before, it doesn't really do anything like on its own. You need a purpose. So this pipeline will you know, take your input text and then generate this additional data through the ontologies and the key phrase extraction. But then it's up to you to decide what you want to do with that. And one of the things that we've been doing so far is to label data on the Livestock Data website, but also using this as a way of helping people to explore the data there, as I'll show you in a second. So, yeah, so for content tagging and exploration, we take the entire Livestock Data website contents and we process each document individually through the pipeline. This gives us, this allows us to connect each document to other documents based on which tags they have in common, which key phrases this will be. But then also we can connect up those key phrases together based on which documents. So we ended up with two graphs. So here, for example, is a graph for the phrase greenhouse gas, and this shows you, you know, immediately which tags greenhouse gas is related to directly. But then you can build out this graph to see, well, greenhouse gas is related to global demand. Global demand is then also related to production. Production is related to you know, to other things. So this gives you like a bigger view of the you know, how these things are related. These are actual tags from an actual paper, actual document. Sorry, but you can see how there's some little issues here, so that probably need sort of ironed out. You know, like greenhouse gas and greenhouse gases probably could be collapsed into just one tag. So yes, that's one thing that we've been using it for. It'd be interesting to see if other people can have any other ideas that they might you know, think this could be applied to. So yes, as I said, yeah, building this graph that can be explored from a given starting point. But here it's exploring tags, but also you can explore documents as well. So you're looking at one document, but yeah, then you can see which documents are related based on the tags. So I think, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say at the moment. We do have, I have two websites with links here, which it might be easier if we could put these in the chat for people to click on. The first one is the, like an actual, this is the demo of the website tagging system that I just talked about there, that you can explore. So you can type in a tag, it will find documents. I'll warn you now that this is not the most beautiful website, but it does work. So that's nice. And then the second part here is actually like direct access to the two components of the pipeline. So you can upload a document and it will give you the key phrases and the scores. You can also query AgriVoc to get these four key things, you know, description, narrower, broader, and related terms, just to see what turns up. But then what the so this second link is actually what's used to build the data for this first link here. So yeah, I wonder maybe if I show people this. Can everybody still see this?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So this is so this is all the Site Explorer. You can't just search for anything at the moment because you can only really search for terms that already appear. Otherwise, it crashes. So it's kind of it's been restricted to searching for things. But my favorite is brucellosis. So oh no, brucellosis is not in there. There we go. Oh yeah, so I guess we'll look up. I don't know. Current breed diversity. So this is so you search for this tag, and then this these are 3 documents here which are related to this, and then here are other related tags, and then this is showing how these tags are actually are related to each other in terms of the documents that they co-occur in. So you can see, you know, these sort of terms are all fairly clustered, and then the further away you go, you get more like less related, but may still be relevant to you, and also might be stuff that you weren't aware of, or stuff that maybe just sparks your interests. You can also click on an individual document. Maybe this is quite a bad example. It's only 3 little documents. I think they're quite similar documents. But you see here the actual raw text that was used. It's a very short text, so it doesn't really get, you know, there's not so much there to work with. But I think that these tags still are maybe fairly relevant. But so the more text you have, the better the system tends to be in finding good tags. But you can see the sort of things that come out here. And yeah, you'll be able to explore this. And then the other part is just the pipeline. So I will upload a sample text, and it will submit. The output for this is really meant to be more machine readable rather than human readable. But what it does is, for this file, here are the tags and the scores. But this is just so that you can upload any document that you have, just to, you know, to see what actually the tags are suggested, and you can have, you know, see what you think, whether they're suitable or not. Another option we do here is, brucellosis will be here. So this will query Agravoc, and it will bring back, you know, the description. It will give us the broader terms, and then it will also give us some narrower terms, and there are no related terms here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I have to say at the moment.
Thanks very much, Alex. Well, maybe you can keep your screen up just for those links. I've also pasted them in the chat. There's some good questions popping up, so I wonder if we'll just do a little bit of Q&A, and then we'll organize ourselves into a bit of a discussion in plenary. So the first question from Mark Harrison is around the multilingual feature. It's great. Is there scope for a translation tool?
I think potentially yes. That's the sort of thing that Agravoc in particular would lend itself to, like, you know, very naturally. It has lots of, you know, it's multilingual by default, and so there's maybe not necessarily translation of entire texts, but definitely translation of keywords and phrases. So the pipeline here that just returns this Agravoc data here, obviously it's all in English, but there's no reason why this couldn't be returned with all of the languages available, along with, you know, their standard, you know, ISO codes for identifying them. So I think it would be fairly easy to do. Again, like the pipeline is very modular in terms of the, you know, what happens at each stage. So this would be very easy to extend. But I think also it depends on the ontology that you're using. However, if you did just want to have translation in there, then there are APIs that could translate documents for you. But then I think probably it just makes it's probably a bit easier to translate the tags that are extracted, perhaps, rather than the entire document. And then, like I say, the ontologies would be a good way of kind of, you know, getting that quite quickly. You know, look up a tag in English, and then if it exists in the ontology, then you can get all of the provided translations.
Thanks very much. A second question that came up, this is from Marie-Angélique Laporte, CGIAR. Do you keep a key phrase even if it doesn't match to an Agravoc term, or do key phrases, are they always linked to an Agravoc term?
That's a really good question. In this case, we keep everything. So every let me think. So I don't know. So yeah, so not every tag that gets extracted wouldn't necessarily have associated data on it from Agravoc or whatever ontology is being used. So I think that's just because like a lot of these phrases are incredibly specific. So, you know, African chicken genetic gains, if we look up that tag, is here, but there's no Agravoc data retrieved, because when you query Agravoc for, you know, for African chicken genetic gains, there's no results for that query.
Okay, great. So now we have the opportunity to get into a bit more of a practical discussion, and this is where we would really love everyone who's online to participate. So we want to talk about both use cases. So I think there's a lot of individuals here who are probably grappling with similar challenges and questions and might potentially find this kind of tool useful. So really kind of trying to unearth some of those potential use cases or applications. And then the other theme is around technical refinements and developments. I think it's a small enough group that we can probably do this all in plenary. And so perhaps the best way we can do it is spend 10 minutes or so talking about use cases, and then the next 10 minutes talking about refinements. So I invite those who are brave to turn on their cameras. I'll just make that possible. Hold on a second. And so you'll be able to start your video, and just to keep things smooth to speak, if you can raise your hand. So there's a button on the Zoom screen called Reactions with a little smiley face. If you click that, there's actually a raise hand feature, just so we can keep track of who wants to speak. You're also welcome to post in the chat anytime. And I guess, Alex, it makes sense probably to keep the screen up just in case there's something that people want to see or demo. So, oh, great. Nice to see your faces. So thanks for being brave. Okay, so let's start on use cases. So we're just open to hearing from anyone here on how they feel like they might be able to use this tool, or kind of any kind of applications. Perhaps, Louise, you want to elaborate on exactly what we're hoping to hear from people?
Yeah, so as we sort of said, we gave a bit of context about the specific problem we were having, which was just to know what sort of standard terms we could use. And we're thinking as a first step that we will use it to help label sort of content on livestockdata.org. But it'd be sort of interesting to hear if other people are actually, when they're, you know, processing their data or trying to come up with tags, what sort of approach they've taken, and if it's been quite a manual process, or if they could see some sort of potential that maybe they would like to explore using this tool. Yeah, something like that, really. Really keen to hear that.
And I wonder if I might pick on Georgina.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at poor Georgina because I can see her face.
Only because, Georgina, I know you've actually had the chance to preview this tool ahead of time. Do you mind sharing just any reflections that you've got about applications?
No, not at all. I'm really excited by this tool because it would enable me to understand more about how the users in the field will actually describe a data set, because I'm not a livestock professional. I've come from outside, so I can only guess, really, and this would enable me to choose terms to tag the data sets I collect that are actually based on what is understood in the field. And I also like the fact that it's going to map some relationships between them. That would make life easier, because I've been doing this manually. So yeah, very exciting. I'm trying to pull together a decent taxonomy to describe a data catalog for a data innovation hub that VHive at the University of Surrey are building. And as part of that, we're looking for open data sets, and we want to employ those FAIR principles and make it findable and accessible, and also to be used under license. And actually being able to describe those data sets is a crucial starting point.
Thanks so much for sharing that. That's really great to hear, Georgina. Anyone else want to share kind of reactions or thoughts on how this might be useful? I see a few other people here who work on these issues. So actually, there's a message in the chat. I'll read it out loud. It's someone whose internet connection is a bit unstable, so they prefer to type. So that's Mark Harrison. Mark, maybe you can just let us know where, what organization you're with. So Mark suggests that active ingredient monitoring of on-farm pharmaceuticals against product use and treatment in situations where no farm-based data collection is the norm. Okay, I'm not sure I completely understand that suggestion. Louise, does that say something to you? We might ask Mark to elaborate a bit. Do you want to say something on that, Louise?
It was just more that it's quite, it's sort of an example of one of the challenges that we are all facing in this area that I think I put up briefly about data domain as well, that in livestock, like we have various, we're sort of looking at some animal health data and animal production and just knowing where to start with your common terminology. And even, you know, Alex is using Agravoc for common terms, but it's quite, it feels quite piecemeal. And so I can see that's quite a specific domain example as well. So already I was trying to think about, is there even common terminology there? So perhaps trying to solve that problem around pharmaceuticals and products. So
great. So we have a hand up. Olawale, I think you're next. So do you want to unmute and let us know your question?
Yes. Thank you, Alexander and Luis, for your presentations. I see this tool as a very important one, and it provides a very readily approachable, usable tool to advance data in livestock, as I'm seeing it. I'm just kind of a bit curious, and my apologies whether you've said this in the in your presentation, I didn't get it. So my question is, when you type a keyword in this link, it kind of brings tags from different, it brings a lot of tags, as I could see during your presentation.
Yeah.
So my specific question is that from which database are all these tags extracted from? Is it only one database, or it just scans through the internet and aggregates things over?
Yeah, so these tags actually all come from the documents on the Livestock Data website. So these aren't, you know, these aren't filtered in any way at all. You know, I mentioned earlier that the pipeline produces scores for these, but I haven't used the scores to filter things out. This is just sort of, you know, like a rough example. So yeah, all of these key terms. So yeah, I've typed in C and it gives, you know, autocompletes everything that has a C in it. So this is just yeah, everything from the documents themselves. These say this is you know, an unsupervised pipeline. So all of the data, you know, comes from the inputs, you know, those initial documents. You know, we do have the Agravoc or, you know, or any ontology, but that comes in later and is used to you know, add additional information, you know, to enrich the tags that were extracted.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Just a follow-up question. Is it possible to search at the same time for more than 2 keywords? For instance, I can see from this list or the demo, like you have low and medium income countries. For instance, is it possible to combine this term with maybe like, let's say, women livestock farmers?
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't be, so it's not possible on this demo, but that's the sort of thing that's, you know, technically like very trivial to implement. So that'd be very easy. So So here, yeah, so this is all the tags related to low and middle income countries. But if you were to then, but then these are all the other co-occurring tags. So if you wanted to have, so in this data set, these would be the only options that you could filter with an and, because these all co-occur. But if you wanted to add livestock development projects, in a live version of this, then yeah, absolutely, that would be one of the key functionalities that you would have there. But for this demo, I didn't have time to implement that.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I wonder, just as a little interlude, I'm going to pop up a poll, which will maybe give us a little more of a flavor of who's here. So hold on a second. So it's just what brings you here today? Because I think we have a whole range of people. So the first option is I'm someone who needs to organize large amounts of livestock data. Second option is I need better research tools for my work. Third is I'm curious. And fourth is something else. If you choose something else, do you mind typing that reason in the chat? And then it kind of gives us a bit more understanding of people's interests. So I'll just give you one more minute to fill out the poll. Thanks. Okay, almost everyone's voted. And I'll pop that up on the screen so you can see the results. Just a moment. Okay, last chance to vote. Amending it. Okay, so 40% are in the situation of needing to organize large amounts of livestock data. So that's good to hear. Fraction are 3 out of 15 needing better research tools. We have a few people who are curious, and then something else. I haven't seen that reason posted in the chat yet. If that person wants to elaborate, they're most welcome. So oh, sorry, I forgot to pop that up. There it is. Okay. So I'm noticing the chat, there's a few more people making comments. So perhaps the next person I'll invite to speak is Andrew Larkins from Murdoch University. Andrew, do you mind introducing yourself and sharing any thoughts you might have?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Vanessa. I am a veterinary epidemiologist, and I'm working with the GBADS project that's being run out of the University of Liverpool. And the area I'm working in is developing an ontology for the GBADS project. So Stephen Kwok is also on the call, who's a postdoc on the project, and it's being led by Megan Bruce at Murdoch. And our ontology at this point is going to be quite GBAD specific at this stage. We have sort of quite clear direction in terms of how we want to use the ontology for the GBADS modeling and process. But this sort of tool, I think, will certainly come in handy, particularly trying to understand sort of the diverse data sets that we're trying to use. So even trying to understand things like how different livestock surveys from different countries relate to each other and how the key terms in those documents relate to each other. So I think that's where this could be really useful for us, trying to understand how the key terms from other sources relate to each other, so we can really nail how we map those over to our ontology. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Andrew. And I did notice that Stephen's in the call, so if he wants to say anything, he can just pop his hand up and add to that. In the meantime, we have another question. I think this is a really good question, sort of back to basics. So this is, I'll just read it out. It's from Krishan, who's a knowledge management consultant with FARA. So wondering the why behind the approach of using unfiltered tagging as opposed to organizing tagging like we used to do 10 to 12 years ago. Why have we not pursued what librarians used to do with indexing to cover concepts or constructs around experiences that we want to better understand or study? I think it's a good kind of real fundamental question. I wonder if Louise would want to grapple with that or give it a go.
I'll give it a go, but then I'll hand over to Alex with his sort of linguistic knowledge. I think for us, there's a lot of data out there for livestock, and there aren't many standards or structures. There's sort of individual ontologies and standards that we can pick on, but there's nothing really off the shelf that we could use. And it sounds like if you were taking a sort of more a librarianship approach, it would be probably a dedicated group just working this through. So we have a very immediate problem that we want to sort of sign up to those FAIR principles. We want our data to be findable, reusable, accessible. And so what we're trying to understand is sort of take this massive text and knowledge and work out what are the common terms that people are using. So it's not the sort of, I guess it's a bit of an unstructured approach, but it's sort of a pragmatic approach for where we find ourselves now. But yeah, I mean, clearly, if there had been a group that was taking a very sort of cataloguing librarianship approach, and we could just take it off the shelf and use that to the T to manage all our data, it'd be great. But it doesn't really exist. But I'll sort of hand over to Alex if he wants to give a bit more context as well.
Yeah, I think probably like the closest thing we often have at the moment to librarians like that is the existing ontologies. So like AgriVoc is like a really good example where it's obviously has a very well-defined purpose, and it has a lot of work has gone into it, but they've also made it very accessible through their APIs, and their which makes it very, if you're able to interact with those programmatically, then you can apply it to all sorts of things. So we're often with it, you don't always have that access to experts so much. AgriVoc kind of is like an ontologies are kind of like an intermediate step, so obviously the experts create that resource and then you access the resource and use that, rather than so that the experts themselves aren't the resource, because obviously that's not necessarily the best use of experts. I would think. Also, in terms of it, I mean, it is the examples here. It is unfiltered, but like I say, this is just a demo at the moment. It's still under development, and there's lots of principal ways that we could apply filters to this to make it a lot more specific, to adjust to the quantity and quality of tags that are extracted from the documents. So I think there's a lot of work there still to be done. So yeah, I think it's a good question, but I think in an ideal world, we would have librarians at the end of these API endpoints answering our questions 24 hours a day, but not at the moment.
Thanks, Alex. And Georgina had just a little tiny comment on that, and I wonder if you can just speak your comment, Georgina.
Yes, certainly. I have an information science degree, went into librarianship, and I have always ended up on the side of using tools to try and help with that process. So you do have the indexes and the subject matter, but also tools like this one can actually help to make sense of it and all of the unstructured data that's out there.
Great.
Vanessa, if you allow me to come in, Christian here.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I think the kind of conversation the presentations we had reminded me of the conversations we used to have way back when we were talking about tagging or using delicious and so on, where we were working as groups of people. And at that time, I remember having a discussion with the network. I was telling them that if we could standardize the way we tag resources that we come across and we find interesting on the web, and we tag it on delicious and using, let's say, one user account, but we shared it or something, we would have a nice way of organizing our knowledge. And I think that's what we're trying to do, except that I understand now that we're saying there's a lot of data out there. Perhaps we also want to be able to discover new things that we have not thought of, because we have our own way of understanding the world or making sense of it. But surely I was thinking we could, and we have kind of done away with the librarians to a large extent because we've had all these nice machines that can do all these searches and you know, dissect all the words and then give us the raw data that we say there's a lot of raw data, but again, we have, in the end, we want to make sense of the data. And I'm thinking that even the, let's see, AgriVoc, is it a thesaurus? What is it? It's an ontology. It's an ontology. It's still, it's similar to the index, that it has what I think what we could have been working on through this time is to have an, I don't know whether the right term is, an ontology of the way we're asking our questions. What are we trying to find out? And what are the concepts that we link in the way we are searching for information or searching for knowledge? And I think that probably could have been the next phase we could be linking with this kind of tool, is that using the way you use the way, well, maybe that's what this whole cloud of is doing, is that it's the way we are linking two AgriVoc terms in terms of our search for new knowledge or search for an answer is the key phrase that we should be tagging, so that the next person who's asking themselves the same question finds and locates the data that could help in identifying, you know, the response to their queries. I'm using the term query, but it's a question in their mind. Somehow I think we are going back to, you know, let's start from scratch again and build up. So as somebody said, we should be able to do, I think it was Georgina who said that, we should be able to do both. And I think I get the impression that we have done a lot of focus on the use of more machines to do things without forgetting the principles of what we were doing with indexing and in terms of knowledge sharing. Because at the same time, we're doing all this kind of deep data drilling, we're also talking about the need to share stories and the narratives and the experiences. And yet you'd find that these two are at the two extremes of what we want. We want the data, but we also want to have the story that helps us make sense of it. And I think all the work we're doing is actually trying to mesh these two. So
I've always found we need a human to be involved. So you need a human to say what we want it to do and a human to review what it's done. So we're not out the loop yet.
I think also like another important human here, which I think also is what Krishan is getting at, is like, you know, the user. You know, one of the things that like Louise and others we've been talking together about at SEBI is, you know, if you have like, you know, enough people using something like this to explore data, then you'd actually get some additional useful data out of that. So given what people are searching for, where do they actually end up going? So that's the sort of thing where it's a potential, you can potentially link up you know, two parts of that. So yes, all of the machine extracted data, but then also connecting it up to people's use of that, which then is quite informative. So, you know, I think a sort of a course example, you know, someone is using a very, if lots of people are searching for a very specific term, but then always going to the page for or documents about, you know, about cattle, then that's potentially informative as to you know, what should be in a vocabulary or an ontology linked to cattle, that if it's not already there, is these sort of terms. But then that's becomes that's quite a different you know, task to what we've been looking at here. But it would build on this, I would expect.
Thanks. That's really interesting. I'm just picking up two questions from the chat. So Mark asks, does ICAR not do some of the heavy lifting on this with the global standards for livestock data? I don't know if Louise, you're nodding, you might have something to add to that.
I haven't looked too much at ICAR, but it has been mentioned in the past. I don't know how the specifics of the terminology, but that was one of the questions we were interested in exploring. Is obviously we've used AgriVoc to start with, but we were thinking about incorporating if there were other standards as well, and that might be a candidate. So I have briefly looked at it, and I think it's something we'll look at. I mean, I think Alex alluded to this as well. One thing we're curious about is AgriVoc actually do have an API which you can query. So I think it would be how we would actually interact with that standard. Would be quite important. I mean, I was also quite curious. I mean, for us, it sounds like we're all grappling with similar problems around standards of terminology, but it also might be that we have specifics of domain. And so I sort of picked up about GBAD maybe having quite specific needs for their terminology, but still being able to use this tool, and probably potentially Georgina as well, that you could almost use it to understand a bit your substrate, your material, your data, your text, and actually understand what is, sort of give you some clues of that sort of standard language. And I think that's probably where we're all sort of coming at, because we obviously have probably different domains to other people on the call, but we all have the similar problem of understanding what is that terminology that we should be using. And I think this tool is really sort of starting us on that road. I mean, I think it's an aspiration for much later down the road, and I'm not even sure if we'd ever get to it, but we were curious about if there were gaps, if we were coming up with tags that didn't occur in any of these standards, what then? Is that actually a gap? Is that a missing sort of link? And, you know, going back to that human element, we definitely see the input from the humans. And as Alex said, are there shortcuts to that? Or will it be a matter of coming up with some of these terms and putting them out to the community? But yeah, I'm very grateful for all the comments so far, really interesting.
Great. So we also have, I guess, a more technical question from Stephen. That's for Alex. So Stephen would like to know what is meant by the score of the tags in the document, and does the edge only mean the co-occurrence frequency count?
So for the second part, if by the edge you mean the in the little graphs that I showed there for the demo, that is just that's the co-occurrence frequency count. But in for the model, off the top of my head, I think it is it's a bit more complex than that. So I need to refresh my memory by looking at the paper. But the paper, I did link to it in the slides, but I'll pop I'll pop that link in the chat.
Thanks, Alex. Marie, I'm so sorry, Marie-Angelique, your hand was up and you've been waiting very patiently. Please do speak.
Yeah, no, hi everyone. So I just wanted to add, like, on the AgroVoc and the standard part, like, you know, it's also, I think, really important that since you are doing unsupervised learning in a way that, you know, if you, for the terms that you didn't find anywhere, like for now you looked only in AgroVoc, but I agree, I mean, can be, related to any ontologies really or standards, that you bring back that information and that knowledge to, like, the maintainer of this standard. I think it's really important, and that's really coming us also a bit from what has been discussed before, that, you know, this is really how standards can evolve and better serve also like a community, even if it's something like very generic as AgroVoc. And in the context of the ontology community of practice of the CGIAR, that is part of this big data platform, then we have a group working on that. Like, you know, we looked at all the terms that are used to tag, like, our CGIAR data in our repositories, and we are working with to really submit this term and really contribute to AgroVoc to have a better representation of our research. And I think that maybe your community can do a similar work, like, you know, working, I mean, they are very open, they have, like, you know, guidelines on how to add terms, they are ready to do, like, some trainings and things. So I think that that's really important to have also this mechanism. Otherwise, like, it will be just a big group of tags that, it would be better if there was more meaning to that. So yes, that will be one thing that would be really, really great if you can do that.
Thanks very much, Marie-Angelique. Actually, we reached out to AgroVoc. We were hoping to have someone from that group in this call today, but we are in touch with them, and we do see it as a future step. So it's great. So we have about 5 minutes left. I think we have time maybe for one more question or comment, or perhaps if Alex wants to reflect on sort of what's come up in terms of where we might go next with all this, or if Louise wants to add anything, that would be great to hear.
Actually, so I mean, the poll got me thinking, and also the discussions that we've had. So, you know, two of the poll items, you know, so most people need to organize large amounts of livestock data, and then many people also need better research tools for their work. I think so for that first one, like I'm very interested to know, like, well, what livestock data do you have, and and what do you mean by organizing it? Because obviously I'm not a vet or a livestock person by training or background, but working with Sebi as a data scientist and NLP specialist has been really fun, because I get to apply the things that I know to real problems, which is quite rare in research. So it'd be really good to, because I imagine that if you could get those people together and talking about data that we have and tools that we need, or maybe not even just saying, oh, I need this tool, but talking about what we need to do with data, then people like myself and Louise probably could be able to come up with ideas for what sort of tools might be possible that could actually get that going. So I think that'd be like a really good sort of step, because I think like say we've looked at this tagging system, but I think like the real product here isn't the tagging system or this pipeline. The product here is really the idea that if you've got data, then it's highly likely that there are existing NLP and AI solutions that could be modified or tweaked slightly for your use case, with minimal effort, and get some potentially some some quick solutions just to see what happens. But I think first of all is getting together those people with the data and the need for tools. If you all just get together like some afternoon and just complain about things, I think see where that gets us.
But that has to happen first, and then we can come up with solutions.
Yes.
Thanks. No, that's a really useful reflection. Louise, do you have a final thought or word? No pressure.
No, it's just that obviously we're keen to collaborate with people, and it sounds like there's some potential avenues. I think, and I've seen some comments about AgriVoc. I mean, so that's probably, as Vanessa said, that is sort of an aspiration, but we're still not quite sure how it will work out, contributing terms, and that, sort of the amount of work that would be involved. So it might be quite sort of iterative what we do, and perhaps a next step for us is to see who's sort of interested in collaborating, and potentially look at some of the, as Alex said, some sort of the data that they have or materials, and see how if the tool's sort of applicable to them. But yeah, I think we definitely would be keen on that sort of aspiration of contributing to AgriVoc. As Vanessa said, we have spoken to them, and there was another initiative called LandVoc, who actually had sort of a subgroup of AgriVoc for their sort of land use needs. And definitely there is potential to do that. Obviously, the sort of costs and resources involved, but it's really up to, if there's interest from the community, it's something definitely we could explore. So.
Great. With that, I think I will start the wrap up. Time has flown. It's been a really good, engaged conversation. I think hopefully we have built a little bit of, a sense of what needs to happen and potentially where we're going next. I think some of the questions are really useful as well. So I thank you all. So if you would like more information, please get in touch with LD4D. So LD4D at ed.ac.uk, and we can keep you in the loop. We do have a sort of loose ontologies mailing list working group, which we occasionally bring together, and many of you are on that, some of you are not. If you would like to be added to that list, just write to LD4D. This was our final Livestock Data summer session. We had 7 altogether. You can watch all the session recordings at our website. The session recording for today will be made available later today. So you can catch up on a whole range of technical data related livestock topics. And finally, if you want to stay connected, join the community, you can sign up to the newsletter, follow us on Twitter. You can visit livestockdata.org for data visualizations, resources, and more. And that's the end of the session. So thank you all again. I really appreciate it, and we look forward to staying in touch and seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much for organizing this, Vanessa.
Great. Thanks for your participation. Bye.
Bye.